Hey, welcome. We have an incredible issue going out for you today. You are going to love our guest, and you're going to want to stay tuned for the entire episode because if you have any questions at all related to spray foam insulation, this is the guy. Like period, end of story. The guy. It is Mike Dyna with Spray Jones, and he has the most incredible information, and not just incredible as far as the way he delivers it, but his accuracy and the technical aspects of insulation. And we are so lucky to have Mike with us to go through this episode talking about spray foam. So, Mike, thank you for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, John, for having me.
Hey, so I'm going to come right out of the chute with, I will tell you, like inside of, groups or when I'm talking to folks, regarding Barndominiums, one of the top questions or problems that I see surface, even with some of the experts, I've seen videos from some of the top builders out there where they ran into like mold problems, moisture and vapor barriers and all that stuff, but it is regarding insulation. So knowing that is such a huge component of a Barndominium, where would you tell people to even start with, looking at spray foam?
Okay, well, I think that people need to understand something fundamentally about the Barndominium, the package that they're buying. Those buildings originally were never designed to be insulated. They were designed to be shelters for cattle or machinery or cold storage, material handling storage, that kind of thing. So the reason that you are paying less for a barndominium is there's far less lumber in it. And as a result, getting the envelope sealed, roof and walls, is far more tricky because the building was never designed to facilitate insulation. So you've got corrugated metal on top of wood framing, and the wood framing to roof to wall connection is just open. It's designed to be a shelter for wind and for rain and for sunlight. And when you go to insulate that, air and temperature, when you have warm air inside and you have cold temperatures outside and they meet, they're going to form condensation. And metal is 400 times more conductive than wood. So as a result, the steel is going to want to drip and it's going to want to condense. So you're going to have dripping problems with your roof and potentially your walls. So just putting up something generically in the walls, insulation wise, is going to lead to trouble. So what I tell people with the barndominium is we are the structure. The spray foam is the structure. You've got the shell, but what the insulation is going to provide is the actual true structure where you're environmentally separated and you have a longevity, multi-generational product and project at that point.
Yeah, that's no, that is a great, that makes a lot of sense from kind of the things that I see, online and when talking to people, going through that point, a lot of times we talk about, having a house wrap or a vapor barrier, or, questions being asked about applying, spray foam directly to the metal ceiling. And again, of course, these answers are that we're making them elementary on the surface, because then it goes into like, your different climate zones and all those types of pieces. But what does that look like from, like, let's just start with something like, the roof and the siding. Like, what do you recommend for people when they start talking spray foam for that structural support?
Well, I want to get spray foam preferably in direct contact with the metal. That's critical with the roof. And
Okay.
the reason being is that if we put, all right, so when you go with your standard barn dominium, you're going to have an engineered truss system that's going to interlock and be held structurally by your columns that's in the ground. And then you're going to keep those square by putting a grid of purlins across. So every 4 feet, you're going to have a rafter, an engineered
Yep.
truss, actually. And you're going
Yep.
to have horizontal girts that are going to keep them square. And that's going to form a grid, a box for the walls and for the roof. And then, majority of the time, to save on cost, the metal is going to be applied over top of the girts. All right, so
Yep.
that's going to create a problem because metal likes to condense. It gets really, really cold. There's a little bit of thermal mass there. So in cold weather climates, so Missouri, Kansas, for sure, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, that kind of thing, Wyoming, we're dealing with it gets cold. And then when it snaps back and starts to warm up, or the sunlight comes out and beats down on the roof deck, you have a problem where it starts to warm it up quickly and warm and cold meet, and it forms condensation, and that condensation is going to want to rain back down into the attic. So that's a huge problem. So people say, all right, well, how are we going to fix that? Are we going to put a membrane up first? Well, the membrane isn't going to solve the thermal problem. It might change where the water is going to collect, but I've seen water collect on the backside of the membrane. So we want to get the spray foam in direct contact with the steel. And what that's going to do is it's going to put structural support to the steel, and then it's going to stop the rapid expansion and contraction that the steel will have. And then it's going to stop that condensing point where any warm, moisture laden air inside can't touch something cold enough to condense and rain back down. So condensation problems are eliminated. And then the final thing why we don't want a membrane up there is that we don't want the membrane falling down and creating a pocket underneath the tin where water can collect, because roofs are going to leak at some point. The tin is going to leak, a screw is going to leak, a seam is going to leak, and you don't want to create a 1 or a 2 inch or a half-inch void where the water is going to sit between spray foam and the tin and then rot out the supporting structure.
So
And
would
I'm
there be
going
any
through that.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm going through that right now with a gentleman that's building a barn for some people, and he wants it spray foam insulated. And he put plywood lining underneath it, and then put the tin over it, but it's open on either end. So now we've got this cavity from either end that the water can get into, and it could potentially just sit there. If the roof leaks, I told him, how are we going to get the water out of it? So you got to future proof some things and think, where is moisture going to want to collect? And when it comes to a roof, we'll separate this from roof and walls, but when it comes to a roof, we definitely want spray foam in direct contact with the metal so that we're
Okay.
not creating or allowing any pockets for any moisture to collect.
All right. And so I do have two questions regarding that. Does it change the factor if you have, like you said, a screwed on metal roof, or let's say a standing seam? Does it make any difference, or same thing? Okay, same thing. All right. And then in an ideal world, let's take cost out for a second, because we know that Barndominiums, a lot of folks move to that building structure for cost. In an ideal
Absolutely.
world, as a spray foam professional, would you like to see them apply, your decking, and then metal on top of that, and then spray foam the roof decking? Or do you say, no, it doesn't matter, go ahead and just put on a metal roof?
Great question. All right. So if you're budget conscious, put on the roof decking, the roof sheathing, 7/16 or what have you, then
Yep.
put a uh, membrane of some type, and then put your metal cladding on top of that.
Okay.
And what that does is that allows you the greatest amount of flexibility. If you don't want the spray foam guy out, then you can blow that roof in with any type of insulation, and you're not going to have the condensation problems in the attic that you otherwise would. If you just have metal to the girts and there's zero undersheathing, you're going to have condensation in that attic in the cold weather climate states.
Okay. Yep.
So it's going
All
to
right.
rain water back down in. Not a lot, but it's going to rain some over time. And you're probably going to see an accumulative effect that you're fine for the first 5 or 6 years, but then maybe on year 8, you start having more problems where the water's been collecting and coming out. So I really like the sheathing for that purpose. If you're going to 100% go spray foam, then you can delete the sheathing and go spray foam. Now, if there's hail damage, if there's roof damage, if the roofing is needing to be replaced, the spray foam is bonded to the underside of the metal, and there's a lot more work at getting that up. And certain people say, well, that's a detriment that I don't like, but I like it because I mean, concrete's very permanent too. When you pour concrete, if something goes wrong with concrete, you're jackhammering it out. So
Right.
we're offering a very permanent and a product with longevity. So I don't try to make choices based on unforeseen one day hypotheticals of needing to rip something apart. Like I don't do that
Yeah.
with concrete, and I don't do it with the spray foam.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. And going back to that thermal wall you talked about, I loved one of your videos you've got on your channel that actually kind of shows, hey, these are those, thermal walls where the woods, the heat transfer coming through the wood, it shows a difference in those changing climates. So like that was it was interesting, because I've seen that before, but when you put it in the perspective in the video, it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So that was really cool that you showed it that way. So what
If I was
and
building a barn dough
what
tomorrow,
yeah, yeah.
I go spray foam direct to the metal
Okay.
because you're not trying to get a lot of lumber into the project. That's the whole purpose of buying that kit. Otherwise, go get it conventionally stick framed. Get a framer and just buy the lumber from the lumberyard.
Sure.
So
Yep.
if you want what the Barndo offers, go get that kit, but then just have it sprayed. Now, there's a few people out there, Paul Marshall, Marshall Remodel, Mr. Post Frame, I think he's calling himself now.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
they're putting up a membrane, they're putting up a house wrap and sandwiching the metal with that, so that the spray foam, at least for the walls, is removable.
Okay.
And that's fine. That's a good way to go. There's no problem. We've done that before, and
Okay.
that's an excellent way.
Well, let's then transition, segue into the walls then. So because that's what we're seeing. So I'm here in Michigan, and a lot of our barn door builders around here are doing the same thing that Paul's doing. They're using a house wrap that goes up. They put that siding on, the metal siding on, or whatever type of siding they're planning to use, and then they apply their spray foam from there. So is getting from your perspective as the spray foam professional, is that what you'd like to see, or does it not matter? And
I
you'd
think
say,
so. I
okay,
think so because you're more likely to make changes with walls with either a vehicle hitting it or a tree or something, whereas the roof it's a little bit more difficult. Okay, specifically with the roof, I don't like the membrane up there because it can create pockets. If the
okay,
membrane isn't pulled tight, it's going to have wrinkles. The wrinkles are pockets that the water can collect, and then it can begin just pooling and holding water indefinitely, which is a
okay,
problem. So when it comes to the roofs, I'm on a hard stance. Direct to metal is the answer. Or put the sheathing up, put the membrane up, then put the metal if you want the metal to be removable. When it
okay,
comes to the walls, nothing wrong with putting the membrane up. In fact, I would say probably that's the way to do it, just because then you can remove it. And if there's ever going to be a change, it's a whole lot easier to do. And you're not
okay,
compromising really anything. It's just what we get into where I'm at is a lot of people have built these buildings for the cold storage aspect. And so they've got a property, they've got a barn, post frame or pole frame building sitting there. And now they want to make it into a shop. Now they want to make it into a partial office. Now they want to
mhm,
expand. So they never put a wrap. So the walls are metal and the roof is metal. So then we're stuck spraying to the metal. We're not going to have them remove the metal and take the cost of putting a wrap up first. Now, I have
okay,
one individual right now that's asking me, well, should I go around and retrofit this? I'm going to go and cut pieces of styrofoam and slip the styrofoam in there. And that way the spray foam isn't going to bond to the metal directly. What do you think of that idea? So I'm talking with somebody about that right now.
okay. All right. Hey, just as we're talking about the walls again, I've seen on a few different posts where people start getting that oil can effect. The movement of the metal, like the
Yeah,
waving,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and they immediately
yeah.
come back and like they start blaming the spray foam guy. And I'm going like, again, because I'm not the professional, right? I'm interviewing all you guys. I'm like, oh, it didn't set well and they didn't feel right. It felt like it was a higher gauge metal, like a 29 versus 26, so it has more flexibility to it. And I mean, is the spray foam really going to move that to create that oil canning, or what's your take on that?
Great question, and one that needs a lot more fleshing out these days because it's a hot topic right now.
Okay.
A couple of things. It's definitely on the lighter gauge side. The 29 is exceptionally light, problematic light on. So I would go with 26 or lower if you can get down into a 24 or even a 22 if they even make it. I don't know if they do. Um, when you're dealing with a conventional post frame with purlins and a middle of the road to lower grade tin, it won't move it, provided that the spray foam guy is sticking to his per pass ratings. The only time I've seen it be an issue is when they've tried to come in and spray 4 or 5 or even 6 inches in one shot. And that's just a total mistake on the installer. They're clumsy and don't know what they're doing. And they're forcing a lot of material into a tight area at one time. And then it bulged it. Now, I had a gentleman email me from somewhere down in Pennsylvania or something like that. He put up a brand new building, and the building was designed poorly, and why his oil canned bad.
Okay.
Um, they had uh, they had taken out a lot less structure. They had a lot less structure in there. And then what he had done is he had put the sheets of metal horizontal instead of vertical. So the
Mm.
corrugation was running horizontally,
Oh boy.
not
Okay.
vertically.
Yep.
So what he was doing was he was taking 16-foot long sheets and he was running them down the entire length of the building versus vertical, and
Wow.
then overlapping the next sheet. So the seams weren't even correct. The water wasn't shingled properly.
Yeah.
and he had minimal amount of support in between. So the stiffness of the sheet was changed, and when he put the spray foam to it, it just bulged it, and it
Yeah.
it had no strength to back it up. And in that situation, the spray foam guy should have recognized that he was walking into a rigged game with the building. The building was naturally inclined to be problematic. The only thing he could have done at that point was put a flash coat on, put a very thin half an inch layer of spray foam on, let it set up, and then come back and hit it again and use the spray foam as the added rigidity to stop the additional oil canning. So to circle back, uh, under normal circumstances, with a normal post frame with the sheets running vertical with purlins and posts, you're not going to have a problem when they stick to 2 inches per pass.
Okay. All right. No, that's great. Hey, speaking, you talked about layering, and I watched another one of your videos where you were talking about, I think where it was one of the videos regarding open cell spray foam
Yes.
about building out like layers to create additional structure. Can you? And this is honestly, Mike, this is where I get lost in looking at like, you know, open and closed cell spray foam. Can you give like an elementary so that people like me can understand and comprehend it, and then maybe an application of a do or don't, like where you apply or don't apply one or the other?
Okay, well, open cell foam is very popular in more temperate climates of the Carolinas and Georgia and Texas and Oklahoma and stuff like that, where it's not quite as cold. There's no mandatory requirements for a vapor barrier. It's not something that I would be recommending necessarily for Michigan. Michigan gets cold, and you do need vapor and air control in your state. And as a result, you want to choose a product that does that all in one shot, which is a closed cell foam.
Okay.
Open cell foam is fine, but in the more northern states, you're going to be needing to do some vapor protection. It doesn't have the permeance rating on its own. It's an open cell, so the cells are interconnected. So think of it a little bit more like a sponge, where it's not that you're going to get air from one side, but the cells are interconnected to where there can be a wicking effect on diffusion. All right. Whereas closed cell, it's like the cells are closed entirely to each other. They're not interconnected, and the moisture cannot easily diffuse from one side to the next. So that's the layman's terms of what's going on. Open cell to closed cells, easy, self-evident to tell which. Open cell's light and fluffy, and you can rip it out with your bare hands. It's the packaging type foam that a computer used to come in the box type of thing, and you're usually going to be filling 6-8 inches of the cavity up. It's not ever meant to be left exposed. It should always be covered. So we're going to put it into the wall, and then we're going to put a wall covering in it, and we're going to fill up either all of the cavity and shave it flush, or we're going to fill up 80-90% of the cavity, because the cavity is deeper than what we need for insulation value. It's an exceptional product for soundproofing, the open cell foam, because it has light fluffiness to it, takes out the broadest range of frequency hertz on the market, whereas a closed cell foam is very dense and it doesn't take out the low end vibration very well. The problem with open cell foam is that it's very susceptible to holding moisture. So if you have
Mhm.
a leak in the roof, it's going to have a sponge effect. Now, some people will argue that that's exactly what they want. They want to know that they have a leak. I slightly disagree on this. I do not like putting products up that have reservoir capability, meaning it's taking the moisture and holding the moisture and then delaying the release. So we don't want huge amounts of cubic footage of foam in the roof to be absorbing water for 1 or 2 years, and then finally it's starting to let it go. And then where do we have a leak? Just because you have a leak over here does not mean it's right there. It could be over off to the side with the wicking effect. So when it comes to roofs, I like closed cell. When it comes to walls, open cell foam work great. Then I would definitely be using a wrap. And the reason being is that I want one more layer between the foam and the tin. So the tin is our primary layer of weather protection. And then I would like to have a wrap that any water that got past the tin, and you know that it will at some
Yep.
point, didn't immediately come in contact with the spray foam, that it had some way of shielding it, having a plane and having it gone and out before it came in contact with the open cell foam. So I was called a year ago by a gentleman in Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. He was building a Barndominium, and they were getting ready to put it up, and he asked me, which products do you like? And I said, well, if you're going to go open cell, because that's what he was talking about doing, I said, then put a wrap around it, put a wrap on the walls and spray to the wrap. so that any water that comes in, tries to get in, will be stopped. So open cell is a fine product. It's just used where the warmer, more temperate climates are, and in the cold climate of Michigan and Wyoming and Iowa and all that sort of stuff. Even Ohio, definitely, I'm a closed cell fan.
Okay. What's the approximate cost difference between the two? Because what
It can be huge. It's
is it?
hard question to answer. It could be 30% difference. It could be double because uh, usually you can select 2 inches of closed cell foam and maybe you're putting 6 inches or even 8 inches of open cell foam. Um, Generally,
Wow.
there is a huge savings with open cell foam. Generally, like you could be 25 or 30% depending on who's doing it. So I've run into a few people that have said I can't get a guy to install closed cell foam. All the
Hmm.
guys in my area are open cell. That's what they want to install. I've had that
Okay.
a couple of times down in Florida. And I'm like, okay, well, then go with what the guys have.
Right.
Um, it's a tool in the toolbox. There's only a few instances where I'd say it's a hard no. Like if I was in Montana doing a Barndominium, I'd say go close cell,
Okay.
you know, because otherwise you're going to have to put up a vapor barrier somewhere to deal with the vapor diffusion aspect. I don't think liquid applied, spray applied, liquid applied vapor coatings are a credible solution. It's too easy to be thin. It's too easy to miss spots. It's too easy to not have the foam, the coating get down into the cracks and crevices of open cell foam. So, and it's at that point, rather than trying to help it along and make it do something, you just switch to the closed cell, and the closed cell's got all the properties that you're looking for. So again, we are the building. The shell is just that, the shell, but the envelope and the livability and the survivability of the building is all based on the envelope with the spray foam. So if the building package costs you 40 or $50,000, and then you got a spray foam quote for 40 or $50,000 to do the whole building, okay, you're into it for 100 grand and you've got your dream. I mean, the spray foam isn't a challenge at that point. It's a necessary expense. I find that most people just under budget for the installation. They don't understand just how important this product is to making their dream come true.
Okay. Here's this just kind of popped up. Do you ever do a closed cell for, an initial layer for your vapor barrier and then an open cell over the top of it for,
You
maybe for
can.
additional?
You can, but
Okay.
again, into the cold weather climate, you have to know your intersectionality, sexual, sectional, intersectional division of where the actual moisture drive is in the wall. So, for instance, if you're going to put 1 or 2 inches of closed cell, you have to make sure that you're actually going to stop the vapor drive at the correct place and not create a problem with the open cell foam. So, you need an engineered detail.
Hmm.
You need somebody that's done a study and a modeling on it to make sure that the recommendation of how much closed cell and how much open cell you're going to be placing isn't going to create problems. So that's Montana and Wyoming and North and South Dakota and in Kansas and all that, and Michigan. But if you're in, let's say, South Carolina and you're just saying, look, I'm near a highway and I want to put a little bit of closed cell on, and then I want to put the open cell to knock down the sound, then you're not going to be as risky. And I've
Okay.
done that for a seed cleaning plant that actually wanted insulation, but they're having mice in the walls, and
Hmm.
so they wanted to leave zero dead space inside the walls when they put the sheeting up.
Yep.
And so I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go closed cell foam to get you your thermals, right? That's going to be your insulation. And then we're going to fill the rest of the cavity up with open cell foam and shave it off flush so we won't leave you with a path that they can run back inside. At that point,
Gotcha.
the insulation is just removing dead space in the cavity. So
Okay.
it can be done.
So you did mention an engineered, spec on it. Is that something that spray foam professionals can do, or are we talking about literally going to a third party for that?
Third party.
Okay.
The suppliers, any supplier worth their salt will have the connections for that and should.
Okay.
If they're serious about playing in that state or that county, what we do is we get all of the details written. So we've got generic set of details. So a wall, if it's meeting the same criteria of a wall, time in and time out, we'll just use a generic detail. But when we
Yep.
get into a specific request, will have a specific detail written, address specific to that place, and then sealed. And then that's what will follow. That way, there's no question or doubt that someone else is taking the risk and the liability. And then lending and insurance and the building code officials, everybody's off our back at that point.
Yep.
Everything comes down to liability now. Everything. Like you don't want to be caught saying, "Oh yeah, this will be fine," and it's not fine, and you want to make sure that what you're doing and why you're doing it has a pedigree to it.
Okay. All right. No, that's great. That's such good information. I'm afraid to have any to go further to have anybody's minds blow up because mine's already going like, oh my gosh, I got to go back and watch more videos. But it really does. This has helped me a lot in just being able to go through and vet out all that other information that you've got on the YouTube channel, which is absolutely fantastic. Like people can go there and it's like you're giving master classes and this stuff. So before we close though, I've got one last question for you. I feel like it's like the top secret stuff. So would you be up for one more?
Oh, one, I'll go up for 10. Go ahead.
Great. Well, okay. So here it is. So like spray foam versus like now, old school, like when I built my first house 27 years ago, it was basically batt insulation, right? So now you've got cellulose and what is it, rock wall and all these other like boards I'm seeing now. Everybody's going like, or not everybody, there's people talking about like the board insulation. So like how does spray foam, like what do you tell people when they start looking at all these other different options and products out there? What do you tell them?
Well, it matters what gas you're using to insulate. The insulation is just a medium material to hold gas to provide separation between high energy and low energy dissipation.
Okay.
So, what's going on with spray foam, in particularly closed cell foam, is that there is a hydrocarbon trapped in the cells, and that hydrocarbon is a poor conductor of heat. So the plastic itself is a poor conductor of heat, and then the gas that's trapped in the cells is a poor conductor of heat. Kind of like trying to drive your car through sand. It's just not going to go very easily. Then the most important factor is the fact that the foam is liquid applied and it rises 25 times in closed cell. In open cell, it's 120 times the rise factor, but it
Wow.
rises and sets in place. So it's filling the cracks, it's filling the crevices, and as long as we can place it to where it needs to go, it's going to seal into the areas that we otherwise couldn't get it to go in if it was just laying flat. That means that spray foam is as modern as tomorrow. That means that you can build it as complex as you want, and I've got a solution to get it insulated and stop air and water from meeting together. You do not have that with sheet products. Sheet products are going to require you to cut them, form them, screw them into place. You've got fasteners. Fasteners become thermal shorts, they become shortcuts. Tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of inches worth of seams in a building are a problem. So you've got to control air, you've got to control moisture, and you have to control all the cheat paths of entry, not just the big easy areas that everybody can do. It's all the little corners and edges, and that's what spray foam takes care of. So in 80 years of insulating, nothing has come out yet that can match it because nothing is liquid applied, rises and fills into the cracks, and then is using and controlling air and moisture. You can't get air to go through the spray foam and you can't get water to go through it. So when you control air and water, there's your building degradation and there's your warmth, there's your energy loss. So, and then the fact that it's customizable, fully customizable. Here we are talking about post frames, right? But I can turn around and make the same argument with the masonry guys. They can
Yeah,
go
right.
put up a block wall, cavity wall, steel stud guys, exterior grade drywall on commercial buildings or a new school or a new courthouse or something like that. So I can take this technology and I can put it inside the building, I can put it outside the building, I can put it under the slab, I can put it down in the ground.
Yeah. Well, in one of your
That's why I
videos, I
built my
think,
career on it.
well, and I think one of your videos you mentioned too about like the adherence to concrete. Concrete is notorious for not being able, not being sticky, right? And
Correct.
the spray foam sticks to it. So like it's acting like all these, double or triple agents. And actually, Mike, I was really sold on spray foam when my son, he's just finishing up with his barn door. He's about 2 weeks away from moving into it. And and when the builder came and he had his original initial meetings, and he was sharing like, yeah, when we built my brother's Barndominium and we spray foamed it, he went through one tank of propane in a year. And I'm like, in a year, man. And when I built my house 27 years ago and I was using propane, I was going through like one every 3 weeks in the wintertime. And he's like, yeah, one a year. It's like, it's going to be tight. And I'm like, sold, man, sign up for that, Spence, So yeah,
Well, for every inch of spray foam that you put up, it takes the energy 22 hours to get through it.
wow.
So that's what's called thermal inertia. And they don't talk about that in R value. It doesn't even well, it factors into the test because the test can't begin for R value until the insulation's reached steady state, which means there's a measurable loss. But to get to steady state, it takes spray foam 22 hours to get through 1 inch.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
It
Okay.
is. That's why
Any
you
other
got the cooler effect.
right? Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. What about any other golden nuggets you would have for people that are, considering they're planning their build, and they gotta consider insulation, the product. Like what are some other suggestions, golden nuggets, secret tips and tricks that you'd tell somebody?
Not to under budget.
Okay.
It is a mental shock. You have no problem spending 20 or $30,000 on concrete, right? You have no problem spending 60 grand or 40 grand to get the building package. But when it comes to insulation, very few people have any more than $10,000 in the budget. So, and then they get the spray foam quote and it's like 30 or 40 grand to spray the whole building and they're shocked. So don't under budget. This is the building. Building decay, you will not, okay, it costs 60 times more than it does at the time of build to go back and retrofit it.
Mm,
So if you build the building and you're having issues and things are dripping and things are wrecked and you've moved in and you're 2 years into it and you're having all these problems now, it's going to cost 60 times more than what it would have at the time of construction to do it then. So if you can't afford, if you're having trouble, I mean, Paul Marshall said this, I agree with him. If you're having trouble with the budget, take another year off, save the money. Don't rush into, you know, poverty and money problems are the fastest ways to push you to the corridors of compromise. And as soon as you do that, then you're just barely getting the building up, getting the building built. And now what are you going to do if you borrowed the maximum that you could get and you just barely got it built for this, and now you're having some problems with it? You're certainly not going to have the money to fix it.
right, right.
And I think you're better off waiting a year or two on your dream and saving a little bit more money or amending your design. Maybe you just don't need 5,000 square feet of floor space. Maybe the 3,000 or the 3,500, you can figure out a way to be more innovative with the use of the space if that will allow you to build to a higher quality level. So the spray foam is really a non-negotiable part of the Barndominium design because of how it's going to tie the building structure together, prevent condensation, and prevent damage, and mice and animals getting into the building, into the cracks. Can it be done without spray foam? Absolutely. It absolutely can. But then you need somebody that is going to go at this with a very methodical, precise mindset, and there's fewer of those than there are of spray foam people.
Yeah. Well, hey,
Uh,
what would you say to people? And I don't know if I see a lot of this, but what do you say to people that are trying to do, and I don't even know if it's actually possible as I'm saying this, but like a DIY application of spray foam?
No, I really shudder on DIY. You wouldn't DIY. Well, okay. Very few, some people can do electrical themselves. Some people can hang drywall themselves and actually get decent results. There's virtually nobody out there that can do spray foam DIY and get good results. Not even a painter or an auto body guy. Because I've had people, oh, don't worry, I've been doing paint for my whole life. Well, I'm sorry, that that actually means you're coming to me with potentially more bad habits than good. So the DIY in Canada, we can't do it. It
Mm,
wouldn't pass building code because what we've done is we've designated that the DIY foam kits are not they're not certified because we've
okay.
recognized in Canada that the foam needs to be a professional grade material and it needs to have a licensed contractor and a licensed material. And those have to be mated up 1 to 1.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, my industry is full of people that had a beer with somebody and got their account set up and took a weekend training course and got their little ID card, and they're off and running and they're quote certified and professional, and maybe they've just got enough insurance to get going. And that's why I started the Spray Jones YouTube channel, because we were losing work to guys that were cheaper, didn't know what they were talking about, and then they would go and bollocks the job up, and the customer was upset. The spray foam industry had a black eye, and nobody won. We
Yeah.
didn't get the job. They didn't, they didn't like the job they got, and the guy's off to get the next one. So I started Spray Jones YouTube channel for the purpose of having a rolling resume, a live resume that we could show people and address these aggravating questions. Like, don't be cheated. Don't believe this. Like, here's how we do this. Here's what to watch for.
Right. Right.
And it's tried to help educate the industry, make the people that are legit out there better,
Yep.
and then educate the consumer, educate the end user, educate people like yourselves, so that when they're talking to these frauds and these fakers, they can weed them out very, very quickly. Because what they can't hide is their language and their lack of knowledge. They just can't. Like, you start pressing them on questions, and they don't have the answers. And
Yeah.
so the feedback has come back through the YouTube channel now, a few years of people watching it. They've said, you know what, I got spray foam done 2 years ago. Because of your channel, I was able to get the right guy. Thank you very much. Right. Or, we're having problems with spray foam. I watched your channel. It seems that they skipped these steps. Here's the reason why. And they're not so quick to blame the foam. They understand that the people are, there's an importance on the installation. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So education is key. And that comes back full circle, John, on your question about, like, if you got to wait a year, you're better off to do it, because you're more likely to take a compromised bid. If you're just barely under budget, and, well, this guy's available and he says he can come at the end of the year, and he was 20% less than anybody else, let's give him a try. Look out. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that some people boost their prices, but other guys, they're cheap and available for a reason.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to spend a lot to get a lot, and get the
Are
necessary
there
budget that you need.
are there good questions to ask, Mike? Like a couple of, like right off the cuff, good questions to ask, an installer, so that there's a flag that pops up or raises right away for somebody, for a potential homeowner.
Sure. I think more than just how long have you been doing this, because there's idiots out there that have been doing it for 20 years. They haven't learned a thing in 20 years. Um, it's going to be, what product are you using? That tells a lot right there. Whose
Okay.
product?
Yep.
The guys that are constantly switching suppliers, they're paying cash, they don't have credit. They'll go with this guy for 2 weeks, then they'll go with this guy for a month, then they'll go with this guy because he's cut off over here, hasn't paid the bill over here. So consistency on supplier is one thing. Then who is that supplier? And do they have uh, their engineering done? Do they have you done many barndos? What do you have for wall details? What do you have for roof details? What do you have approvals in this state or in this county? Like, the fly-by-nights do not want to have their credentials picked. They want the job, they want to get paid, and they want to be paid by the weekend, and they want to be gone, right?
Yeah.
So uh, going at it slow, seeing if they can answer your questions, don't get annoyed, have the authority to back up what they're saying, and that they've got the approvals, that they've got the engineering, that they've got the details, and they've got a good supplier that they're with. There's 61%.
Yeah.
Because the level 3 guys, the lower bottom guys, they just don't. Okay, so I had a guy call me up. He's like, I had a guy hired. He was going to do the job for me, but I fired him. Can you take the job on? I'm like, okay, sure. Why did you hire this guy? I'd like to know. And he said, well, he was the guy doing the construction, and he also did spray foam on the side. Okay, well, there's a red flag right there. It's not his primary line of work, right?
Right.
He's got other avenues of line of work. But hey, there's guys that are into 3 or 4 things, so let's not knock him too hard there. So that's just one red flag. The next biggest thing was he kept delaying the quote. So he kept saying, how much is this going to cost? Oh, don't worry, we've budgeted for spray foam. We've budgeted for spray. Yeah, but how much? How much in my budget? So he never would get down with an actual written quote. And then he wouldn't get down with it, obviously with a specification. Am I getting 1 inch, 2 inch, three? Are you blowing in? Are we batting some of it? Are we doing all of it in foam? So that was the issue. And then the big thing when they finally decided they were going spray foam was, all right, well, we need to get our permit updated for foam, because the permit people would be coming out, the city would be coming out and seeing that they're not using fiberglass and they're using foam. Well, then they're going to need to know certification number, material number, and then all those details that I spoke to you about in our jurisdiction, they have to be on file with the permit. So who are you hiring? What product are they using? Let us see their certification numbers, that it's current, they haven't been canceled. And then do they actually have the engineering for what you're asking them to do? So if it's a roof detail or a wall detail, we want them on record. So he kept delaying that. Why? He didn't have it.
Yeah.
So when he finally pressed him and said, look, you're not spraying my house until we have all the information on the permit application, he was in the wind.
Wow. Yeah.
So
That
that's when he
makes so
came to
much
us.
sense. Just everything you outlined, just those three questions alone would be enough, I think, to get the average person, like your senses would stand up if they start like getting
Oh yeah.
dodgy on you, right? So
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
They want to come in fast, and they always want to beat somebody else's quote, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
get the other answers from the other guys, and then get me in to come in last, and I'll beat anybody by 10%, 15. Huge red flag right there.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great, Mike. You are fantastic. I am gonna, for the sake of not having us with steam rolling out of our ears and the wheels going too fast, and and having my mind go over top, and knowing that I can get to your YouTube channel, which is amazing. I'm gonna put it up here. Does that look right? Is that where we're at? Because man,
Yeah, that's correct.
that is a treasure trove of information for anybody that's looking for spray foam. So again,
Excellent.
Mike, we appreciate you being with us so much. Maybe we can hop on another episode down the road
Oh,
with
absolutely.
some more details. So
Absolutely. Paul Marshall and I have been doing some stuff together, and we're going to do some stuff again this year. You're more than welcome. Let's go, John.
yeah, sounds
Friends are
great.
always welcome.
All right, thanks again, Mike.
All right, have a good day.
All
Bye.
right.